Wherever you're listening in the world, it's a pleasure to welcome you to IsraelCast, the podcast powered by Jewish National Fund USA, your voice in Israel. I'm Steven Shalowitz, first reminding you that for over 120 years, Jewish National Fund USA has been the premier philanthropic movement for the land and people of Israel. While best known for planting trees in Israel, JNF USA contributes to Israeli life in so many ways, including community development in the Negev and the Galilee, preservation of heritage sites, supporting people with disabilities, and connecting high school and college students to Israel. To learn more and to see how you can contribute, do visit jnf.org. Once again, after all these years, hope you got it, jnf.org. And in a short while, I'll be sharing with you info and dates for the upcoming Jewish National Fund USA Conference 2023, so get your calendars out for that. But first, Sarit Zehavi is our featured guest on this episode of the program, and I'm absolutely delighted. Now, Sarit is the founder and president of Alma, a nonprofit and independent research and education center specializing in Israel's security challenges on its northern border. Sarit has briefed hundreds of groups ranging from U.S. senators, congressmen and women, and politicians to senior journalists and visiting VIP groups both in and outside of Israel. She's written numerous position papers and updates as well, focusing on Lebanon, Syria, and Israel's national security challenges. Sarit served for 15 years in the Israeli Defense Forces, specializing in military intelligence. She is a lieutenant colonel reservist today. Sarit holds an MA in Middle East Studies from Ben-Gurion University, and for her unique achievements, she was selected by the Jerusalem Post as one of the top 50 most influential global Jewish personalities of 2021. Sarit, her husband Yaron, and their children live in the Western Galilee, and as I said, it's an absolute pleasure and honor to welcome Sarit Zehavi to IsraelCast, who joins us now on the line via Zoom from the Alma Center, just 12 kilometers from the Lebanese border in the Western Galilee. Sarit, so lovely to have you on IsraelCast.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening and good morning to me here in New York City, and thanks for carving out the time for us. Thank God for Zoom, right?
Yeah, completely.
All right. Well, listen, so many bases to cover, and I really want to start talking about the Alma Center with you. Sarit, just share with our very global audience how it came about, what's the Alma Center's mission and the real mandate.
Wow. Look, I ended my service in the Army a decade ago, and a little bit less than a decade ago. And I knew that I kind of have a gift that I can explain very complicated issues in simple words so people can actually understand. I briefed a lot of delegations that came to the Northern Command as an intelligence officer on the borders of Israel, mainly on the Lebanese border. And I knew that I wanted to continue to do that as a civilian. I wanted to continue to do something meaningful in my civilian life to contribute to the state of Israel. The problem was that I didn't have the intelligence anymore. I didn't have a source of information anymore. I had to create a source of information by myself.
Sure, because when you were at the IDF, you were given all this information.
Yeah, I was part of the system. And now I have to gather the information by myself, to read in Arabic, to analyze, to write, to make the whole process of research, and eventually to speak about it. I became extremely busy. I met tens of groups every month. It was a successful small business, but it was not, it was not the right thing to do. And I understood that I need to do something else because nobody focus on Israel's security challenges on its northern borders. And you can see the logo behind me. It's Israel's northern borders. There are a lot of think tanks in United States or in Jerusalem or in Tel Aviv, but they kind of do all different kind of security challenges. I want to focus on the north since I'm a resident of the north, and it affects my personal life. Moreover, during my military experience, I was in the army during the war in Lebanon in 2006. And part of my experience was all about the international pressure. And I felt during my service that people outside of Israel don't really understand what we are experiencing here, what's the threat looks like and how it is to live under this threat, and how do you deal with the fact that it's an asymmetric warfare, while the other side is putting its own people at risk, and you're doing everything you can to defend your people and the other side's people. And all of that together, along with, sometimes you just need an opportunity. And I was blessed to be given an opportunity by an organization that supports social entrepreneurs here in England. And they told me, Sarit, what do you dream of? What do you truly want? How do you really want to spread the word about what's going on here? And I went home and I thought about it. And I knew that I want an institution that will be able to become a platform of knowledge of the security challenges over here, educational platform, and also research platform, because how can I make any education without research? That's the basic problem. Along the way, we learned that the research has a life of its own, because we have a discipline that is not being used in civilian platforms. The intelligence discipline of how to analyze information, of how to understand security issues and military issues and terror and counter-terror is used rarely when we speak about the northern arena, the Shiite axis, Hezbollah, etc.
Why is that, Sarit?
I don't know. Truly, I don't know. But that's the reality. And what we have been doing in the past few years, and it was a process of understanding that we actually have something unique here. We succeeded in creating something that doesn't exist elsewhere. And actually, this is what I wanted. I wanted to become a source of information also to the other think tanks. So what we are doing, we are kind of bringing the information bottom up. Since I'm every day on the border, since I see the changing of the border along the years, and I see Hezbollah on the border, and I see how IDF is protecting me from Hezbollah on the border, and I see, and we speak Arabic, and we follow social media in Arabic, and we know how to do terrain analysis, and we can combine all of that together to a different kind of analysis that nobody else is doing.
So you established Alma, I believe it was 7 years ago. Is that correct?
It was okay. So as a small business, it was when I ended my service, 2014. But as an NGO, a nonprofit organization that mainly rely on donations, this was in 2018. And this, you cannot. It can be a nice provideness for a single woman, one woman show. But if you want to have an institution of research, you need to have an organization. It's a different kind of thinking. It's a different kind of platform. Today we are 10 in the staff, and it's not a business anymore. It's it's not a profitable business plan. It's a business plan that has a mission, and the mission is to educate people, as many people as possible. Yes, influencers and policy and opinion makers around what is happening over here.
Yeah, and not only in Israel, but around the world, as I said.
Especially around the world.
Yeah, as I said in your introduction. So can you talk how you get really granular information that is so incredibly useful? And also, how do you recruit? And who makes a good intelligence officer?
Well, 3 different questions, because I'm not picking my staff by who can make a good intelligence officer. I am picking my staff. First, it's important to have a diverse staff in this profession, because this melting pot of different opinions and different point of view eventually creates something different. And we do have here a diverse staff that is composed of different political views, secular and religious, different religious backgrounds, Jews, Druze, Christians, all the human mosaic of the Galley, almost all of it is part of Alma Center. How do we make the process is, first and foremost, to gather the information. We have very good media, Arabic media researchers that know how to find the information. We know which kind of questions to ask. It's very important to ask the specific questions of what's the information that you're looking at. And then in most cases, what we do is, journalists or, researchers are using cross information. Sometimes we don't have the capability to cross information, but we can cross textual information with visual information. And I think this is the news of the 21st century, that the tools that I didn't have when I started are, the common tools now, because you have Street View and you have satellites, and all of that is open sources intelligence in the media. It's free, it doesn't cost anything, and all you have to do is just, if we find, for example, a textual information that there is a missile sites somewhere in the desert of Iran. Okay, I'm giving an example. So what we do, we send our terrain and our analyst to search for these missiles. And eventually he finds these missiles. He finds satellite images of these missiles, and then he composes a video that shows the missiles. And then next to the missiles, he finds, for example, an Air Force base of the Iranians that actually protect these missiles. And that way you create a story of who these missiles are threatening, and who defend these missiles, and where these missiles are, and what their capabilities. And that way you connect all the dots to one story that can be provided to English speakers like you in a way they can understand.
So I want you to give a shout out to the website, which is really robust. And you have a number of reports there, articles, and really great information. So share with our listeners where they can learn more.
So it's Israel-Alma.org. You have the educational section where you can learn about our educational programs, and you have the research section where you can, get all the information that we publish about Syria and Lebanon and Iran and Hezbollah. And I strongly recommend that you will subscribe, and that way you will get our weekly newsletter. I write a weekly column in the newsletter, which is not published elsewhere. Which is not only about the North, sometimes it's my personal experience as an Israeli about what's going on inside Israel. And I strongly recommend.
One of the things that people will notice there is that you have a simulation exercise. And before we move on to some security issues and questions, I want you to talk about that, because I think it's such a game changer for people that participate in it.
Look, I started this project as my life mission. So for me, it was very important not only to meet, Congress members, for example. I wanted to meet everybody. And I understood, it started from thinking about the students. I understood that students have very limited time they can actually sit and listen to somebody speaking. They need an interactive activity. Later on, I learned that this is right for everybody. With these cell phones today, everybody developed a disorder with sitting and listening for a long time. And I wanted to put people in my shoes. I wanted people to understand what it's like to be Israelis, what it's like to make these kind of decisions, and mainly what the dilemmas that we are facing. So the whole idea of the security crisis simulation that we have here in Alma War Room is that they are becoming the Israeli government. They now need to face dilemmas that we face here every day. But there is no right or wrong answer to these dilemmas. It's all about taking in consideration various players and asking questions. And it's not an escape room that you have the right or wrong. I'm not testing anybody. I'm not criticizing anybody. My mission is to make people feel, even emotionally, feel what I feel, experience what I experience. And that way, maybe understand us better, even not necessarily agree with us, but understand us better, understand what the dilemmas that we are facing. So the moment these participants, by the way, it was built hand in hand with AIPAC. We made a lot of pilot with them. And eventually what we are doing is that when after the group has kind of a briefing, a short briefing that trains them to become Israelis, and usually the briefing is on the border next to Hezbollah. You can see I was on the border today. I was filmed by Hezbollah military operatives everywhere I went. I filmed them, they filmed me. And okay, after you are, you get this kind of experience, you enter to Alma Center and you get a badge and you become now the Israeli government. You become the minister or the prime minister or the chief of staff or the head of the Mossad or whatever. And they are divided to 5 groups according to the ministries. And now they face dilemmas, they get new information, and they have to make decisions. I don't know, the same decisions that our government had to decide this week, what kind of military operation to carry out in Jenin, how to retaliate to Hezbollah or Hamas launching rockets from Lebanon. These different kind of dilemmas that we face here every day.
There's a lot to unpack there. And before we unpack, just on a little bit of a lighter note, the name Alma comes from your daughter. Her name is Alma, but you know in Spanish what Alma means. Did anyone? It means soul, nefesh.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So anyway, should we do another? But I want to unpack a few things there because you said Hezbollah films you, you film Hezbollah. And when I was doing my homework for a conversation, you were interviewed on the Australian radio show L'Chaim to Life with Maurice Klein. And the headline to promote the show was, quote, Lieutenant Colonel Reservist Sarit Zehavi, the woman who is really, really aggravating Hezbollah with the truth. And I'll bet that must have put a smile on your face when you heard that. I mean, or what do you think? Because they clearly know you.
Maurice quoted Lebanese and Hezbollah Twitter accounts, articles, videos. They use what we publish as well. They quote us, they follow everything we publish, they read everything we publish, and they respond. Sometimes they threaten us. Sometimes we have cyber attacks. And we definitely understand that we make them, whether it's Hezbollah, Iran, and maybe even some other players, we make them feel a little bit uncomfortable with what we expose about them. And I'm very, this is the unexpected achievement of Alma, which I didn't imagine when I started, that we can actually expose their military capabilities in a way that they will feel uncomfortable with what we are doing. And that way they will blame us that we are kind of a branch of the Mossad in northern Israel, though truly, after 15 years in the army, it was extremely important for me to establish an independent organization. I'm the boss. Nobody tells me what to write about. I want to bring our point of views, the way we analyze the information. And I don't represent, even though there is the Israeli flag behind me, and I totally want to do something good for the state of Israel, I don't represent the state of Israel, and I was not nominated by the state of Israel to represent it.
We have a truly international audience with varying degrees of understanding about Israel, Sarit. So if we just sort of take a 30,000-foot approach, really, what should our listeners know in broad brushstrokes about Israel's security challenges and needs that they wouldn't otherwise get from their daily news consumption? Like, what would you tell somebody that they need to know? A few facts, for example.
Yeah, okay, a few facts. First and foremost, it's not all about the Palestinian issue. Things are happening in the Middle East. People are getting killed in the Middle East that nobody cares about every day in Syria, in Yemen, it used to be in Iraq. These wars are creating a lot of suffering. These wars are creating a lot of threat to Israel and the West as well, and they are not getting any attention. Following this sentence, the main player today, it can change tomorrow, but the main player today that is posing this kind of threat is the Ayatollah's regime in Iran. We should take this threat very seriously. The fact that Iran today provides drones to Russia that eventually attack in Kiev, provides drones to Venezuela, 1,800 kilometers from Miami, it means that Iran is a global threat, and this is before discussing the nuclear issue and the missile program. Iran is not only Israel's problem. It is a global problem, and this is how we should approach it. And I think when everybody will understand that, people will stop asking me when Israel will attack Iran. This shouldn't be the question. The question should be, will NATO attack Iran if the Iranians will not comply with the demands of the international community? So that's the main thing here. And the last one, of course, is that Iran is supporting terror all over the world, and especially next to my home and above my home, if you like, with the rockets that were intercepted above my home last Passover. Putting these proxies of Iran in Syria, in Lebanon, in Yemen, now in West Bank, in Gaza, the PIJ, all these Hamas as well, all these proxies or freelance of Iran, it depends on who you're talking about, are posing a threat to the state of Israel, are endangering the lives of Israelis, even though we have the upper hand with technology, Iron Dome, shelters, whatever. The amount of missiles pose a threat to our lives. And this is something that must be dealt.
So building on that, as we record this in early July of 2023, the IDF just concluded a tactical operation in Jenin, which you alluded to just a moment ago, to root out terrorist cells. And I want to touch on the underpinnings of it, because you wrote in a July 3rd, 2023, just a short while ago, Jerusalem Post piece that, quote, in recent months, the Israeli defense establishment has been discussing the multi-arena scenario, a war in which Israel would be assaulted from multiple arenas simultaneously, including Judea and Samaria, with riots erupting throughout Israel. Iran is spearheading the scenario and working around the clock to develop the capabilities to actualize it, unquote. Can you elaborate on that, and also the Lebanonization of the West Bank, which you've also written about?
Of course, it's connected. Iran is given capabilities that we used to see in Lebanon when we were there until 2000. And it is trying to get these capabilities to be present in West Bank as well, as you saw with the mines that exploded in Jenin below IDF vehicles and created a damage to the vehicles. Luckily, the IDF was prepared, so soldiers were wounded but not killed. With rockets that were launched all of a sudden from Jenin, and this is something that must be stopped when it's small before it becomes again South Lebanon. And the multi-front narrative that Iran is promoting is not something new. Okay, it's important to say that it's not something new, but I think that in the past year and a half, it is something that was accelerated by the Iranians, and they are putting a lot of efforts to realize that. They still have a long way to go. There is still things that we can do to prevent it. And we've seen this also with the short operation, I think last month in Gaza against the PIJ. You could see that though a lot of Iranian pressures, Hamas didn't actively, maybe passively joined in, but actively didn't join in. Hezbollah definitely didn't join in. And the Iranians are trying to push to create kind of simultaneously attack against Israel. It's not easy for them, but in order to get to this point, they need to arm all these factions, including the factions in West Bank and even inside Israel, against Israel in all these capabilities that I've just described. This is more than stabbing and ramming attacks in Tel Aviv. It's different. It's a different jungle. And that's why I think that it's important to deal with it now before it will become something else, before it will become South Lebanon. Israel security forces discussed this a lot in the past few months. So the encouraging message is that it's not that easy for Iran to get there. But they are working on that, and they are investing a lot of time, efforts, and money. And that, I think this is one of the reasons that IDF entered Jenin, because it is unacceptable to see these kind of capabilities inside West Bank. This is, West Bank is in the heart of the land of Israel. It's, if you look at the geography, it's not Lebanon. Lebanonization of the West Bank is kind of misleading term, because we unilaterally had withdrawn from Lebanon. We cannot unilaterally withdraw from Jenin. This is different. It's not like you have a foreign land out there you can withdraw and that's it. It's not like that.
Well, it's the Lebanonization from the standpoint that Iran is in the geography, right? And wreaking
Exactly.
havoc. That's where the Lebanonization comes in. But you're absolutely right. It's different from the standpoint that Israel can't just say, okay, pick up and leave. I mean, it's right
Yeah.
there. That's the
And
difference.
I wanted, that's why it was important for me to talk about it, because I didn't want people to be misled by the term that for us Israelis, it's very clear. You know, we have the memories from Lebanon. So when we say Lebanonization of the West Bank, we have the same pictures in our head. But people outside of Israel that may read that may think that, okay, so here's the solution. You can just get out of Jenin, get out of West Bank, whatever. But it's not like that.
Yeah. Again, clarifying the fact that Iran is wreaking havoc in that particular piece of geography. So you brief many groups, as I mentioned at the top of the program, many from the US government, you brief a lot of journalists. So when you're speaking to them, what surprises them most about Israel's security issues? What are some of the common questions that you're getting?
Wow, so many. First, many of them don't know anything about what we just discussed. Truly, and they always stand there and they look at the border and they say, how come this doesn't get to our media? And I say, I don't know, but it just doesn't. Second, I get the question again and again and again, don't you think that the Iranians are just threatening? It's just words and not deeds. And then when I combine in front of their eyes the deeds and the words, or if you like, in military terms, the intentions and the capabilities, then they get it. Then they understand that it's not just words, that the Iranians are truly doing something to fulfill their crazy dreams. I think that, again, sometimes it's really difficult for people to understand that it's not about West Bank. You know, I had occasions that I was standing with a group inside an Israeli community next to the border, which is today a wall, and they see a wall, they see orchards next to the wall, they see a community next to the wall, and then I tell them that this community was founded in the end of the 60s, and then they said, so what, it's West Bank? No, it's not West Bank, it's the Galilee. It's different. So also, you know, to understand the geography, even the proximities. You know, we drive from the Syrian border to the Lebanese border, and it takes us 40 minutes and 40 minutes the long way. So you cross the Galilee. What, it's 70 kilometers between the Mediterranean and the border with Syria? Well, that's it? That's Israel? Yes. Even with proximity, sometimes people are surprised when they don't just see a map. They stand there and they see the Mediterranean and they see the Syrian border from both sides. That's it. They stand kind of in the middle. We have a nice lookout in the middle.
And Sarit, you just invoked journalists, and when during this recent operation in Jenin, they didn't talk about how it was being backed by Iran. All these, the terrorist cells are being backed by Iran. That just didn't make it. And at least when I was watching the news, and I'm just wondering, where's that disconnect? Why aren't they connecting the dots?
Let's start from the basic definition of somebody who is ramming civilians in the middle of Tel Aviv is a terrorist. He is not a driver or, I don't know, motorist, or I don't know what. I'm quoting from the Western media now. This is
Well, they also say militants, and I don't understand. Why don't they just use the word terrorist?
You should ask them. But I want to
Well,
clarify.
I'm not briefing the journalists. I'm wondering, have these discussions ever come up in your conversations?
The journalists, for them, you know, terrorism is a point of view. Everything is relative these days. Everything is about narratives, and there are no facts. Okay. My mission is not to stand there and argue with them, though Israelis like to argue. My mission is to talk about my point of view, respect their point of view, and when they go home, they will have to decide what they want, how they want to write it. But I want to emphasize something that is important here. I'm not saying that all terrorists that came from West Bank were received orders by Iran. And maybe this is what is confusing. The terrorists that rammed people in Tel Aviv yesterday and stabbed people in Tel Aviv yesterday, I believe he didn't get any orders from Iran. But Iran created an atmosphere. Okay, so Iran have a few ways of creating impact and influence inside West Bank, inside Lebanon, Syria, whatever. One of them is providing the money, providing, the support for the martyrs' families, providing assistance, wide assistance to the population. We see this in Lebanon and in Syria as well. Another way is to provide weapons, fine, with Hezbollah, that's extreme, with the tens of thousands of rockets. But in West Bank, it's a little bit more complicated. It's not knowledge how to build rockets, okay? But it's more than that. It's how do you create an atmosphere? And here Iran is operating inside the social media to encourage these young people to support or to hate Israel. And there is no Iranian signature, official signature that you can find there. It's something that happens below the surface. So Iran actually takes advantage, maybe I can put it this way, on what the Palestinian Authority is doing, on the growth in the support of Hamas, genuine support of to Hamas in West Bank, taking advantage of that to even accelerate that and expand that even more and deepen the hate even more. And that way they don't need to build only the PIJ or more PIJ. They're doing that. We wrote about it today. They want to build more PIJ brigades in West Bank. But they can, even by creating the atmosphere, the Palestinians, not all Palestinians are going to kill Israelis because of Iran. Okay, this is what I'm trying to say. But definitely Iran is there to create the atmosphere and to create more atmosphere in social media, more incitement in social media.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. Well, listen, this would be a really good time to take a break, Sarit, and for me to highlight the fact, I don't know what you're doing at the end of November and early December, but if you're going to be in the United States, do join us at Jewish National Fund USA's Global Conference for Israel. That's what I wanted to share with you and our dear listeners around the world. And that will be taking place. The conference happens every year, and it will be taking place, as I said, in Denver, Colorado, November 30th to December 3rd. So mark your calendars to join leaders and innovators from around the world who are shaping the future of Israel. Plus, you won't want to miss America's largest Shabbat dinner. Do you like a good Shabbat dinner, Sarit?
Always, especially when I'm cooking.
Are you a good cook? We'll go back to the conference in a sec, but what's your go-to dish or your specialty dish? Do you have one?
I have all kinds of Iraqi food, Syrian food, Lebanese food, Asian food, Yemeni, whatever, Israeli food.
I'm going to place an order before I make it up to the Western Galilee. How's that? Well, listen, we want to encourage our visitors not only to sample Sarit's, I'm sure, delicious cuisine, but also to visit jnf.org/global to register and see all of the incredible interactive Israel experiences, outstanding speakers, unparalleled spirit. There's so much ruach there, you just won't believe it. And there will also be just wonderful networking opportunities, again, at the Global Conference. And for those of you that enjoy listening to IsraelCast, I hope you do, because of course, you're listening right now. I'll actually be doing 2 live recordings of IsraelCast there. Hopefully, my voice will be a little bit less croaky than it is today. I apologize for that, but I'm drinking as much water as I can. Nevertheless, do check out the Global Conference, jnf.org/global, where you can register. And really, we hope to see you there. There's going to be like over 2,500 people, and I personally can't wait for that to take place. I'm sure we're going to be talking a lot about security there too, Sarit. So we'll be invoking your name in this conversation as well at the Global Conference in Denver, which really brings me to the point of something. And this is a real big pet peeve of mine. So I apologize to our global audience for my sharing it, okay? But maybe people also feel the same, and you might feel the same as well, because I've learned that the average layperson really knows very little in the way of intelligence. It's not to say they're not intelligent, but when we talk about intelligence, it seems like it's an iceberg, as I like to think of it, that we see a little bit above the water, but there's a whole lot below the water. Can you address then really how much we, the public, know versus what the real story is? Because again, everybody is like a Middle East expert when you talk to them. And that's my pet peeve.
I think that I deliberately, define the goals of Alma not as a source of information, but as a source of knowledge. And I think there is a difference between information and knowledge. Information can be something that it's easy to consume, but if you search a little bit, but the difference between information and knowledge is exactly connecting the dots, creating an analysis, and understanding the information. And I think that in many cases, people, that eventually they're not experts to this topic, don't have the tools, don't even have the tools to differ right from wrong, fake from truth, to put things in the right context. And this is exactly what we are trying to do. The way we write, the way I try to clarify this information for my audience, I assume that even if they read the specific information that Hezbollah has tens of thousands of rockets, for example, or that Iran is involved in activating proxies in the region, they don't always understand what does that mean. People sometimes judge the reality according to their own values. What is religious and secular in the Middle East, for example? What does that mean? What is a religious identity? Religion becomes an identity in the Middle East. What does that mean that Iran is involved? Iran is creating militias, but these militias are not a regular army. What exactly is a regular army? What kind of Hezbollah is an army or a terrorist organization? Well, what's the difference? Exactly. So many questions that if, we just follow the terms, the language, there was the great movie Lost in Translation.
Yes.
We are lost in translation in different conceptions. When I train my speakers in Alma, the first thing I teach them is don't say this town is big, this town is small, this is far away, this is very close, because in American terms, when I say a town is 4-hour drive from me, it is far, far away in Israeli terms. In US terms, that's nearby, 4 hours drive. It's okay, we can do that. Even proximities are different. So that's why I said that, God is in the details, and we are looking for the details. I am blessed to be living and to establish this project in the 21st century when the internet enables me to find intelligence that in the past was completely classified, and we couldn't, today we trace flights. And all of a sudden we find out if Iranian flights landing in Russian military base in Syria. And it's an open question what they're doing there. We couldn't find this kind of information 15 years ago in open sources. This is just a small example, okay?
Right, so it's a totally different ballgame.
Yeah.
I like that distinction that you drew, information versus knowledge. It reminds me, we recently had on the program Professor Jody Holland from the University of Mississippi, and you might have met him because he participated in the faculty fellowship program. And what he was telling people is that Israel is a country but you might not understand it.
Exactly. When people are coming to me, and I always ask the students, do you follow the news? Yes. Okay, how do you follow the news? What's your sources? So I get Instagram. They even usually don't know to point on specific Instagram account, TikTok, and Al Jazeera. Okay, what can I say?
Yeah.
How do you understand that? What's the context of all of them?
Right. Well, that's the beauty of your doing interviews and you're coming on a program like ours so that we can spread the word about what Alma does so people can educate and get that knowledge and really connect the dots so they can become more intelligent about the intelligence that is out there. And certainly we won't know everything. So I think that's the one thing that people need to know is that they won't know everything, but certainly they can know a whole lot more by getting it from a source like Alma or from other sources that are really, really reliable sources. So to what extent do you do cross programs or collaborations with other think tanks around the world?
Yeah, all the time, and even with writing, webinars, just consulting, speaking with each other. We are following them, they are following us all the time.
Great, terrific. Apart from wanting to safeguard Israel, Sarit, I'd imagine your work takes on a very personal tone because your family roots are in Lebanon and are in Syria.
Yes. I don't know how much time we've got, but yeah, actually, my grandmother was born in Beirut. So each time Nasrallah or anybody else says that the Jews in Israel should go back to their homelands, I ask, okay, my homeland is here because my grandmother was born in Beirut, and then she was married to a rich jeweler in Damascus, and my father already was born in Damascus, and he had to run away from Damascus as an 11-year-old child because there were riots against the Jews in Damascus, and it became very dangerous, and the Haganah actually rescued the children. He came by foot. They walked.
And this was before 48.
Before 48, it was in 45. Yeah. 1,000 children were brought every night. 20, small groups of 20 children, 15 children walked to Israel, mainly teenaged. My father was among the youngest of them, and my grandmother had to run away from Damascus through Beirut, meet her family there, and then she crossed the border to Israel. And this was before the establishment of the state of Israel. This is for my father's side. For my mother's side, it's even more funny because, my grandmother from my mother's side was born in Hebron, which is West Bank, right? So, what am I, a Palestinian? What? She was expelled from Hebron in 1929. So my mother was born in Tel Aviv. And in her birth certificate, it is written Government of Palestine, because this is the name of the British Mandate of Palestine. Okay. So what, my mother is a Palestinian?
Do you share
what
those
are we talking about here?
By the way, do you share those personal stories with those that you meet and those that you brief?
My greatest enemy meeting the groups is time. Meaning that sometimes I only have like 40 minutes with them or an hour. So I share it with the groups that I have the time to share it with.
Well, I think even try and carve it into the groups that you have limited time with, just as a headline so that they understand. Because again, if you were to say to Hezbollah, okay, you want me to leave Israel? Okay, that's fine. Then I'll set up shop in Beirut. How do you feel about that? Right? And go back to where I came, or I'll go to Hebron. And how do you feel about that? So I think that really puts into context, you are really a woman of the land, and it's this larger holy land.
I can tell you that I had incidents that I told this story and people were like, what, are you Jewish? I said, yes, I'm Jewish. But they didn't know there are Jews that used to live in Lebanon and Syria.
Yeah, I know. Well, again, it's that knowledge and information that is just lacking. In that case, it's information and knowledge which is lacking. Okay. Right. And that's a great service that you're doing. Listen, I'm super mindful of the clock, actually, because I know it's getting late for you. But I just want to close our conversation with this, really, because I heard in an interview you gave that since you were 16, you dreamt to go into intelligence, since you wanted to understand the Middle East. So, Sarit, after all of these years, do you understand the Middle East?
Wow, I wanted to understand why they hate us so much, why there is no democracy in the Middle East. Professionally, I understand, but as a human being, it's still it's not easy to understand. You can't perceive that, can't really understand. It's an open question. It's still an open question.
Okay, so the search for that continues.
All the time.
All right. And that's why you're doing what you're doing at Alma. Listen, Sarit Zehavi, this has been such a fascinating conversation for me. I'm going to speak on behalf of our global audience and saying I'm sure it was fascinating for them as well. And we want to truly thank you for joining us here on this episode of IsraelCast. We look forward to having you back. And I cannot wait to make it to the Alma Center when I'm next in the Western Galilee, truly.
Warmly invited.
Thank you. And please set a place for me at your Shabbat table too.
Sure, no problem.
All right, and we'll have info about Sarit and the Alma Center on the show notes page of this episode on our website, jnf.org/IsraelCast. And of course, if you're a regular listener, you know that we do release new episodes of the show every other Wednesday. And just so you never miss an episode, subscribe to us wherever you get your podcast. Simply search for IsraelCast. It's just so easy. And don't forget to rate and review us, because that really helps us with our rankings, which in turn make it easier for more people around the world to find us. Or you can always enjoy the show by visiting us at our website. Once again, it's jnf.org/IsraelCast. Now, it takes a whole moshav to put IsraelCast together. For that, we thank Vivian Grossman, Dara Shapiro, JD Krebs, and Eli Kadrin. Our editors are Jay Rothman and James Casada from Mirtone Studios, right here in the very heart of New York City. And the music that you hear at the top until the program is titled My Eden. It's by the very talented Rafi Malkiel from his album Water on the Tzaddik label. IsraelCast is powered by Jewish National Fund USA, your voice in Israel. For more information about JNF USA, visit jnf.org. If you'd like to write to us with story ideas or just to say hello, I know Sarit would love to hear from you, and so would I. So do email us at israelcast@jnf.org. Meantime, I'm Steven Shalowitz. Thank you for tuning in and looking forward to having you join us on future episodes of IsraelCast.